The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. There will not be many people who do not know about this book. This book was and is truly beloved and has been made into animations, children's books, and even comic books. The majority of readers of this book will probably think that The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is such a fun, easy, and simple book to read. Tom Sawyer is fun to read and the stories are interesting. However, there is one certain thing. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is not a simple book. This is because the fun plots and characters are devices to cover up and deliver carefully crafted satire. The satires in this book are dangerous because the stories and characters that hide the satire slowly get us tricked. Christians should be especially attentive while reading the book because the satires are mostly about God and Christianity. People can read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer just for fun and enjoyment, but because the book deals with much more heavy things than expected, great discernment is needed. In this presentation, I would like to introduce a new perspective towards the book The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by looking at the satires in the book and focusing mainly on the satires towards Christianity. By this, I hope that I will be able to effectively deliver a hint of how this well-beloved book should be read with discernment. In order to do this, I chose three main topics to carry out in my essay: Samuel, Sawyer, and satire. These three things each represent the author, character, and significance of Tom Sawyer. Knowing these three things are important when interpreting the book and may enrich the reading of it. I will start my presentation by introducing the author of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Samuel Langhorne Clemens, who is more commonly known as Mark Twain. Mark Twain, his real name being Samuel Langhorne Clemens, is the author of many beloved, significant, and notable literary works. He grew up near the Mississippi River, and his life, especially his childhood, became the background of writing many of his novels. He later became a steamboat pilot on the Mississippi. As he worked as a steamboat pilot, he thought of a pseudonym Mark Twain, which is a boat word meaning mark number 2 when sounding the depth of water. After his work as a steamboat pilot, Twain started his work as a writer. By the time he married and settled in New England, Twain was known as a famous writer. Mark Twain was an atheist. To be more concise, he was actually an anti-Christian. He was a God-hater. One of the reasons that Twain wrote Tom Sawyer is known to satirize Christianity. Just like his purpose, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is definitely full of satire towards Christianity. However, Twain was not an anti-Christian before. He was born in a Christian family and his mother made him go to church on Sundays. However, the major factor that he converted to atheism is known to be his mother. Twain was not a healthy child when he was young, and his mother told him that she wished that he did not survive his childhood, causing a negative influence on Twain. Twain did not want to believe in the God that his mother, who told her son that she wished he would not have survived, believed in. Remembering his childhood and thinking negatively of God, Twain started to write The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, a book with delightful stories and characters, but also with severe criticism. It is helpful that the character of Tom Sawyer is first understood before looking at the satires in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, because every story revolves around Tom, and understanding the worldview of the book is essentially understanding the character of Tom. Tom Sawyer is a young boy. He is very mischievous, noble, and also very brainy. The character of Tom Sawyer is seen throughout the book, and Twain uses the character Tom, Tom's adventures, and Tom's friends to satirize Christianity. The satires in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer are not easy to figure out, but once the satires are discovered, they are interesting to look at. That is because the satires are quite unexpected when just reading the context. One of the most interesting stories in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is about superstitions. Tom Sawyer is a boy very sensitive about the superstitions that he hears. Tom and his friend Huck are fearful that when a dog cries at someone, that person will die. They believe that a dead cat and some rituals will get rid of warts. And superstitions are used to satirize Christianity in this book. When reading the novel, it can be noticed that the town Tom lives in is shown as entirely Christian. However, the people of the town treat superstitions with just as much importance and seriousness as Christianity and their church. Superstitions do not acknowledge God's control and therefore they are dangerous. By the superstitions that he portrays in his novel, Twain is not satirizing Christianity directly, but is satirizing and disregarding it by making the silly superstitions and church look about equally unserious. Other than the superstitions in the book, there are many more significant satires in the adventures of Tom Sawyer. Most of them come from making Christianity look less serious. Twain uses humor as a strong weapon in satirizing. In this book, he makes Christianity get compared to many silly affairs in the town and ultimately makes the readers laugh at Christianity. One example that may look quite not obvious that satirizes Christianity is a story about a beetle and a dog. It was Sunday and Tom went to church with his family. Tom is bored during the sermon and takes a beetle out of his pocket. A dog takes interest in the beetle and the beetle bits the dog. The dog runs around helplessly, and the attention of the people are turned to the dog from the reverend, trying not to laugh. How can there be satire in this hilarious story? It is similar to what happened when Twain satirized Christianity by superstitions. Twain restores the seriousness of church and worship by making the incident of the dog and beetle look much more interesting and fun than the dull, stagnant sermon. The turned attention of the people make the funny incident equally, if not more, important. Twain is saying by the story that the importance of Christianity is merely the importance of a dog and a beetle. In the book, Tom and his friends Huck and Joe run out of their homes and go to a nearby island without telling anyone. All townspeople believe that they are dead, and they prepare a funeral. One night, Tom sneaks back home and hears that there will be a funeral for them. Tom, learning the interesting fact about the funeral, comes back to the island and convinces the other two boys to stay on the island for a few more days until the day of the funeral. Then on the day of the funeral, Tom and the boys come back in town, surprising the adults. This is one funny story in the book, and it is more interesting that this is a satire. Known as dead but came back as alive. Does this not sound familiar? It cannot be known for certain, but it is highly possible that Twain is satirizing the resurrection of Christ. The resurrection of Christ, the noble act that Jesus did for us only because of love, is being satirized as laughable as the story of Tom and his friends getting away from home. By the many stories that satirize Christianity, we can see how Twain wanted to satirize Christianity and God. However, Twain cannot reject that he is living and writing in a world that God has created. All the work he makes is made in the world of God. And though he was an obvious God-hater and tries his best to satirize and defame Christianity, Twain actually ends up praising God and the world that he created. Twain's books contain many aspects of the way God works and of God's creation. Twain praises nature that God has created by describing it in an absolutely beautiful way. Also, in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, the evil antagonist Injun Joe meets a very desperate and unfortunate end after all the crimes that he commits. By this, we can see how God punishes sin and the evil who do not fear God. Additionally, there is one more interesting point of Tom Sawyer that Twain tried to satirize Christianity but turned out to be different, is the character of Tom Sawyer himself. As said previously, Tom Sawyer is a noble and charming boy. How can anyone not like or feel sympathy for such a character? And how can this lovely character be a tool of satire? The truth is that all the nobleness, clever head, and charming characteristics of Tom did not come from God, but just from the earth. We can say that the creation sanctifies and gives Tom his virtues, but never the Creator. Twain constantly rejects the Creator, but praises the creation. However, we, as Christians, who know that all creation is from the Creator, can recognize that Twain praised the Creator in the end by praising the creation. This way, we can know that Twain failed in satirizing Christianity with the character of Tom Sawyer. Additionally, Tom Sawyer can be thought of as a great Christian figure if he just believed in God more seriously. His bravery, fearlessness, nobleness, love, and caring mind are the things that a true Christian figure trying to follow Jesus' steps should pursue. Twain created a great Christian figure while trying to satirize Christianity with the character. He cannot deny the fact that he is living in the world of God. Tom Sawyer has many traps that we may fall into. But how should we treat such books? Should we avoid them? After thinking about these questions, the conclusion that I made was that we cannot avoid anti-Christian books like Tom Sawyer, but have to remember and be alert that there are satires in those books when reading them. The adventures of Tom Sawyer have many easy traps that we can fall into if not cautious, but there are many things that can be learned from the book, and also, it cannot be denied that it is an incredible book by a gifted author. We cannot and should not avoid such books as The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and we can laugh at the satires in it. However, as Christians, we should treat the book with discernment, remembering that Twain was a God-hater. And we should rejoice at the stories where Twain, living in the world of God, praised God even without noticing, remembering how God's power is great. Thank you.